This past November 2021, I visited the Ark Encounter for the second time. I had been there just a few days after its grand opening in 2016, and so today I thought I would take you on a little tour of the grounds of the Ark Encounter and my visit there. So, the Ark Encounter, a 5-year report card coming up. The Ark Encounter, which is in Williamstown, Kentucky, is a major Christian-themed amusement park. It's an extension of the apologetics ministry of Answers in Genesis, which was started by Ken Ham almost 2 decades ago. And it's twinned up with the Creation Museum, which is also in northern Kentucky. But today I want to take a look at my recent visit to the Ark Encounter. And let me tell you what this presentation is going to be and what it isn't going to be, just so you know what's coming up here. So what I'm going to do is I want to reflect on some of the changes that have taken place over the last 5 years since my last visit to the Ark Encounter, which was, as I said before, very, very soon after it first opened. So this is going to be a bit of a photo tour of the theme park, except the Ark itself. I'm not going to spend a lot of time inside the Ark. I've done that at previous times. So this is sort of like the overall totality of the park, which has grown a lot since I was there last. Actually, the only thing to see was Noah's Ark at the time I was there 5 years ago. So that's one of the big differences. I have some response to critics who claim that the whole thing would fail within 5 years. What is the current health of the Ark Encounter, and what do I think about its own 5-year and 10-year prospects coming up? So I'll talk about that a little bit as well. What am I not going to do? Well, this isn't a review of the Ark Encounter's presentation of scientific evidence. I'll mention a few things about some of the things that they present or you would see at the Ark Encounter, and probably make a few comments about the scientific validity of those. But this isn't meant to be a big takedown of the science of the Ark Encounter or anything like that. This isn't a complete guide to the origins of the Ark Encounter theme park, how it all began, all of its machinations and the things that people said about it. This is just like, hey, this is like a visit to the Ark Encounter, and sort of like you walk through and what's my impressions? What are the things that I've learned from observing people there? And what do I know about people who have visited there and told me stories about it? So this isn't a scientific presentation in that sense. I'm not going to review the theological justification for the park's Christian ministry, although I have a few comments about their ministry in the end and the effectiveness of their ministry. And it isn't a guide to visiting the park, right? Ticket prices, when to come, best practices and all that. I have sort of a grade for the quality of the park at the end. In other words, my report card, right? And so I'll save that to the end. So let's kick it off, though, with a little bit about the history of the Ark Encounter. Here's an image of the original conception of the full theme park from 2015. Now, this was conceived in Ken Ham and other folks at Answers in Genesis minds before that, but this is sort of the first time they presented images of like the plan or the possible plan for the Ark Encounter as it was just beginning construction. All right, and then so in the summer of 2016, the Ark, which is the central, right, that's the central feature of the park, that was constructed first and opened in 2016. Now, the only thing that was there in 2016 was you were driven up and you parked somewhere in here. Actually, you didn't park. I'm going to show you. There's a bus that will bring you up, drop you off here, and you stood right about here, and you looked across a new pond at the Ark, and the Ark was the thing you visited, and there was nothing else except there's a large restaurant over here, and that was the beginnings of it. And since then, it has grown a lot. Now, it's not grown in the way that it's shown here. They've changed their plans, but nonetheless, there are many other features that I'm gonna show you in a few minutes that are involved in the Ark Encounter now. This is a picture from several years later. Ken Ham shared this on his Facebook page at some point in 2020. And so again, like I said, you used to drive, the bus would bring you up here, drop you off at this viewpoint. You would look across at the Ark as sort of like, this is your first impression of this immense building. And it is immense. It is an impressive wood structure. And behind that, we see what I'm going to show you pictures of, which is there is this the zoo. And so there's a number of animals that are exhibited in the zoo, and I'm going to show you some of the signage from there and talk about that. They have a place where you can ride a camel, and there's a petting zoo area and so forth. This is actually a support facility back here. This is the restaurant. Seats, I think at least 400 people can fit in there at a time, just in the inside of that building. You can see now there's a kids play area. There's a bunch of other smaller shops and facilities. There's a 4D theater that's here. And what you can't see here quite as well is the construction of their conference center and auditorium. And I'm going to show you pictures of that as well. And since then, they've announced just recently several new additions. Right, they're talking about building a replica of the Tower of Babel, more of a sort of first century after the flood, sort of scene of what it would have been like in those times. And they're also, what was the other thing? Oh, they've got a carousel that's being built with unique organisms you can ride on, right? They like these pterosaurs. All right, so the whole park has greatly expanded, and this is a typical strategy of building parks and keeping people coming back, right? There's always a new attraction, and so once you've seen the Ark itself, and you spend a couple hours walking through it, and go get something to eat and leave. You wonder why you need to come back. Well, now there's a lot more things to do there. It has become a much more holistic attraction in the sense that there are plenty of things to do for kids, and there are more things to do for adults, especially more things to hang out and more places to eat and talks to listen to. And you can go and listen to a talk or a conference or participate in some educational workshop while your kids are off doing something else. And so it becomes more of an entire day sort of event or trip for a family, or even a multi-day event because they want to sell multi-day passes. Spend a day here, spend a day at the Creation Museum. So I should probably say something about why did I visit the Ark Encounter? Did I, hop up and decide, hey, I just want to go take a tour of the Ark Encounter? No, it's not high up on my list of things that I want to do. Like I said, I've already been through the Ark, and I know a lot about the displays that are there, and I've talked about them a lot on my blog. But I happened to have an opportunity to go see the Ark relatively easily, and that opportunity was I had taken my daughter to Ohio grade level chess championships that were being held in Cincinnati. And my daughter plays, she plays very long games. And so, they have 45 minutes each to play, and there's going to be 5 games. So this is going to be a long day. And I knew that she would push every game basically to its limits. And so it wasn't so hard to say, hey, I'll take a couple hours here, and I'll drive the hour south and go see the Ark Encounter. So the Ark Encounter, as I said before, is in Williamstown, Kentucky, and so there I am in Cincinnati. Took me about 55 minutes to drive down to the Ark Encounter and take a gander at it. And here's a picture of me at the entrance, and this is actually from 2016. It's quite a bit nicer now. Got some really nice flowers around it and so forth. And this is also from 2016. This would have been my first time I could see the Ark Encounter in 2016, in which that time I explicitly drove all the way from where I'm at now up in northern Ohio down in order to tour the Ark so that I could talk about it at a sort of on a personal level, like what I've actually seen there myself. And I know many people who have gone to the Ark as part of family visits and so forth, and I've had many, many discussions with them about what they've seen and what their impressions are of the Ark. And many of them have gone because they truly want to go. Others are dragged along as part of school like trips and so forth. And so I've gotten to talk to people who have visited the Ark for a variety of different reasons and had different impressions of the Ark before they went. Everything from I had no idea what this was or what they teach there to full on like I've read all of the Answers in Genesis material, and so this is like my Mecca, right? I have to go visit the Ark because it exists and I must see it. And so what you do is you arrive at the entrance. There's a very large parking lot, fits well over 4,000 cars. They anticipated, from the very beginning, a high interest in this particular theme park. And you get to the parking lot, you can see the Ark way off in the distance, and you notice it's the color of the Ark, and you're going to see a change in it. So that's one thing that's changed over the past 5 years. The wood has aged, and it has aged gracefully. I remember there was a lot of criticism of the Ark wood itself at the time, and they were right about what was expected to happen to it over time. And so you're there and you hop on a bus, and which I'll show you in a moment, and you take a little trip over to the other entrance to the theme park. And this is my picture from 2016 standing across from the lake. And so you can see they were really hurrying to try to get this done by the time that they had, they were hoping sort of early-ish summer 2016 to get the peak of the vacation season. But it ends up being July, I think it was July 12th. Now I can't remember, July 9th or July 12th or something like that. I'm here on July 17th. I was actually on vacation in Western U.S. At the time that it opened, so I didn't get to go to the opening. I really would have tried to have gone to the opening. And you can see that the grounds are pretty crude at the time, right? They had just shoveled everything off, thrown some grass down. Here's this lake, and then boom, there's the Ark, and it doesn't even have the ramp isn't even done yet. But nonetheless, the main attraction is there. And here I am standing in front. I apologize. The previous picture was from a friend of mine who took a picture earlier, and this is a few weeks later. And the grass has actually grown a little bit by the time I arrive. Yeah, so there it is. It is an impressive structure. It's some 5-ish stories tall. I mean, inside there's 3 main floors. Well, there are really 2 main floors, and they have an upper floor. They've now started to finish off. But it's some 500 feet long. This is an impressive structure. You can see it. You can get a glimpse of it from the freeway, which is sort of great advertising, right? They kind of got it right in the right position, so you get a little glimpse of it, but you can't really get a full. You got to wonder what is that over there. So you feel like you kind of have to check it out. A couple things about its opening before we get to my more recent visit. This was a pamphlet that I picked up when I was there, which had been printed prior to the opening. And so this was sort of like your little pamphlet they give you. Welcome to the Ark Encounter. Welcome to the life-size Ark Encounter attraction. We're excited that you're here to be part of history with us. Here's the things you need to know about your visit and so forth. So you open up, it has all this information in it. But I want you to notice this part right down here. During 40 days and 40 nights, tickets are valid only for daytime admission or evening admission. So their original, and I remember following this very, very closely in the spring of that year when they're selling tickets for the opening of the Ark Encounter. It was a huge push for, this great new attraction coming. They called it the 40 Days and 40 Nights event. And the idea was that you could get a ticket for the daytime hours or the evening hours. And the reason for this was the anticipation that there was going to be so many people that wanted to come that they're going to have to split it into 2 times in order to, reuse the parking lot and be able to handle this number of people coming through this particular structure. Because, again, the structure is the only thing to do there except for the restaurant at that time. Now, what ended up happening is that they abandoned the 9 to midnight thing and the separate times because they simply didn't have the demand that they had hoped that they would have, and so then it was open. Now, as we go through here, I'm going to talk about what does it mean? What does success mean for this particular park? And a lot of people point to what I'm pointing out right now, which is, oh look, they had planned for having 16,000 people there a day on weekends, and it's going to be these overflow crowds, and they were going to pull in 2.4 to 3 million, possibly more, possibly 4 million people a year into this attraction, and it's never lived up to that exact billing, but that doesn't mean it's not a success, I'll call a business success, or I'll say a success that any other theme park, right, would say, hey, I'd be happy with their numbers and what they're doing. And so, yes, they've had about 1.2 million people visit the first year, and they've had weekends where there's 8,000 people there at a time. When I was there on a Friday, which was only 2 weeks after opening, it was pretty light. There was, maybe a couple thousand people had visited that particular day. I didn't have any problem going through the Ark or standing in line or anything like that. But as I said before, this isn't a success. What does anybody do when they're promoting a new attraction? Right? They want to get people excited about it. They're going to tell people, like, this is going to be a huge event. And you tell people there's going to be a lot of people there because that in itself draws more people there. It's a strategy. And that strategy, when you don't get the numbers that you said you're going to get, it doesn't mean that's a failed strategy, right? It doesn't mean you failed, because maybe you hoped, right? I mean, anybody hopes, right? They're going to fill a stadium or they're going to do this or that. But creating the environment of that possibility in itself breeds success. And I think we could say that the Ark has met a certain amount of success. I don't think that in the rearview mirror after 5 years, I can't call the Ark Encounter a dismal failure by any means. Now, later on, we'll get to the end and I'll talk about my projections for the future. We'll talk about what does it have to do to keep going, and what are its future prospects. And I have some reservations, but probably don't have as dim a view as some people do. And I would say that some people have a dim view because it's more of a hopeful dim view, right? And that's the same thing as having hope that 5 million people will show up a year. That's not a reasonable hope. But not meeting that expectation isn't a failure for the Ark Encounter. Whereas for those who hope for its failure, all right, or project its failure and it doesn't fail, I mean, that in a sense is a failure, because there's no success, in being wrong on that side of things. I wrote about the original Ark Encounter opening and made a number of projections, and I'll talk about some of those and whether I was right or wrong as we go through here. I've written, okay, so my one picture of the inside of the Ark, as I said before, on this recent trip, I didn't actually go through the Ark, which I'll explain why when I get to that point. And so I'm only experiencing the rest of the grounds because I've spent a lot of time inside before. And so I'm not going to take a trip through the Ark and take you through that. To be honest, there's not a lot to talk and show you there, other than if I were to talk about a lot about the science being presented or the messages being presented, and I'm not interested in doing that in this particular conversation. This is more about the overall theme park itself. But if you want to learn more about my reflections on my previous trip to the Ark, I've written fairly extensively about, and with pictures of the inside, and reflected upon a variety of different aspects of the messages that are being presented to the audience of the Ark, and my own critiques of those particular messages. And so that's on my blog at thenaturalhistorian.com. All right, let's get to 2021. So here I am. I've just come into the parking lot, and first of all, you should know that the parking lot costs $10 to park, but I did not get charged that $10 that day. There's a lot of special events that are held at the Ark Encounter, and so this is one of the things that's different from 2015. They didn't really have a space to hold like large talks and have music festivals or do any of that kind of stuff in the original first year, even really first 2 years, and really even the first 4 years until they built this conference center. And so when they added the conference center, that allowed them to do lots of special programs and have other things besides the Ark. And so there are ways to get into the Ark Encounter theme park that don't include actually visiting the Ark itself or entering the Ark itself. And the entering the Ark is a separate, is really the separate cost of the park. So typically when you buy the Ark Encounter pass, well, that, the $50 for an adult or whatever, that's going to include the Ark Encounter. But if you're there for a special event, you may be there just to go to a conference. And then if you're just there for the conference, you could choose to buy a ticket to be able to get in the Ark in addition to the grounds. I was there for the Creation College Expo. And so I had signed up online for my free tickets to that particular expo at the conference center. And as part of that, it said it was free. I wondered when I entered the parking lot, was it really going to be free? Was I going to get charged $10? And I drove up to the parking gate, and I said I was going to be going to the Creation Expo, and they waved me through. It's like, nope, you're not visiting the Ark, and so I didn't get charged the $10 for parking. So it truly was a free event for me, and that's part of the reason I'm not showing you pictures of inside the Ark, because I didn't enter into the Ark because I didn't pay to go in the Ark. I very easily could have gone in. It's not like it would be hard for me to get in and take a look around, but that wouldn't be ethical. I didn't pay for it, so I didn't go in. But I did walk around the grounds, and that's what I'm going to show you today is my tour of the grounds of the Ark Encounter theme park. So here I am getting ready to get on the bus. This is November. We're in the middle of the Delta coronavirus wave. I saw one other person at the Ark Encounter that had a mask on the time I was there. I counted up about 570 cars in the parking lot when I left, which was around 2 p.m. So sort of at the height of the time, and it was actually a beautiful day on a Saturday in November. And so, 500 cars might translate into maybe 1,000, maybe 1,200 people in the park at that time. So me and one other person, has a mask on. And I also have my red hat on, so I feel pretty comfortable there, right? I'm fitting in. So you take this short bus ride. You get dropped off. Now you get dropped off at the conference center, because that's where lots of other events take place, right? That they need to get you to if you're just going to an event. And then from the conference center, you can go out of the conference center or you can take the sidewalk around to what now is the main entrance to the Ark Encounter, which is this rainbow bridge, right? And so the symbol of the rainbow after the flood ends to Noah, indicating God's promise that he'll never do this again. And so you enter through the rainbow, and that's when you're going to get your first real look at the Ark. And so here I have a little bit, I'm walking up to it now, and now I see the Ark looming much larger in the distance. I walk through that gate, and you walk past the zip lines. All right, so that's another feature that's been added to the Ark. A little pricey for me, but I will say, in my report card at the end, that as the theme park goes, the prices are very much on par with other theme parks. It's definitely not higher than other theme parks, but it's also not a cheap place to attend. But I'd say it's typical. And so as a family vacation spot, this is sort of what you would expect to pay. And in case I forget to say it later, the food there I thought was very reasonable, very reasonably priced. This isn't airport prices or anything like that. I think that from a economic standpoint, coming to visit the Ark, you're going to kind of I think most people will come away thinking, yeah, that's about what I expect something like that to cost. Now, if you came to the Ark in 2016 and you only had the Ark to see and the restaurant to eat on, yeah, I'm not. There were a lot of complaints from friends of mine that it just felt like too much. Like there just wasn't enough to do. I mean, you could spend a lot of time in the Ark, but to be honest, the inside of the Ark is a little bit boring for most people. I mean, because it's just a lot of signs to look at. There's nothing interactive there. It's just wander by, look. Oh, that's how they did that, and it's not. It's not very engaging unless you are engaged and interested in the topic, right? You have to be like, I really want to know, like, how did he feed all the animals? And I'm going to read the signs and try to figure that out. There's just not much else happening there at that time. That's not the case now. And so part of, what I'm saying about the Ark 5 years later is that they've added a bunch of other things to do. This isn't just about come and be educated about how Noah saved all the animals on earth and fed them during that year. There's a lot of other engagement possible. Much of it is just sheer entertainment because to keep the kids happy, right? I mean, it is a theme park, and it's a theme park that's supposed to be like other theme parks. You're supposed to have fun here too. It's not just educational. It's fun, and then maybe you get some education on the side, right? But it's also creating an environment, right? It's creating an environment where you can feel safe because your kids are only going to be shown things that are going to be wholesome, right? And it's a pleasant environment to be with other people you feel like you have some connection to. Like, I feel like I can talk to anybody because we all have this Ark thing in common, right? We all have this common worldview, and therefore we feel comfortable with each other. And I do get that feeling when I'm there from walking around and visiting with people. And I spent a lot of time talking to people at the Ark Encounter and my original visit, just engaging with them about what they thought of different displays and so forth. And it was a very friendly environment, and the people are very, very helpful there. So here I am swinging around, and I'll say that the grounds are amazing. They don't look amazing in November because this is already past, Kentucky, it's kind of, they don't have the greatest fall in the world, but, most of the leaves have dropped off the trees and the grass doesn't look as nice. They've just planted their winter sort of flowers. For Christmas coming up, I could see that they were setting up the light displays. And so they have all these different light displays, and they put on quite a light show. I mean, it really is impressive, and that's another thing. They invite people to come. Now you're probably going to pay your $10 for parking. Take the bus, and you can stroll around the grounds for free in the evenings and check out the light show, and of course get some hot chocolate. And they have the store is open and so forth, and so they'll sell books and so forth. But you don't have access to the Ark at that time. But that's just another way of having people engage in the park and be able to, have people there purchasing stuff. All right, so now I'm walking up closer to, now I'm very close to where I was in my original picture from 2016, but the Ark looks very different now. The ramp is done. The wood has aged to now it all kind of blends in. I think it looks a lot better than it did before. The plants have matured in the area, and so the park has matured to the point of looking like it's not just like something brand new and fresh, and yet it's very clean and carefully taken care of. That's just me. So swinging around before I go into the conference center, because I'm really there to go to this conference and to see different presentations by Christian colleges and so forth. And I came to hear one of the talks that one of the employees of Answers in Genesis comes over from Answers in Genesis to give talks at the Ark Encounter. The Ark Encounter is technically a different company that runs the Ark Encounter, an LLC, but it's all just under the umbrella of Answers in Genesis, just for business reasons, is segregated out. Basically protects Answers in Genesis in case the whole thing collapses from taking a massive loss. And so this is, you do feel like you're at a large theme park, right? You got all these different attractions and things to do. And as I said before, it's going to expand, and it's going to get at least a third larger, if not 50% larger in terms of number of things to do over the next few years. So let's go back to the conference center. And, I think this picture shows a little bit of the style of the construction in most of the area. It's kind of imagining what maybe, Mediterranean, Mesopotamian / Egyptian, style of things, kind of a hodgepodge of stuff, color schemes and so forth at the location. And here I am about to enter into the auditorium. And what I was there for is the Creation College Expo. So as I said before, here they have this large facility which seats like 1,000 people. And in this auditorium, they have had a huge music festival. So this past summer, they had 40 nights of music. And so people are buying tickets for, different Christian musicians and coming to the park. And they may or may not be actually visiting the Ark when they come to the park. But nonetheless, they're getting people in the door and experiencing the rest of the grounds and things to do. And then, buying zipline tickets and paying for rides on the camels and buying tickets for the 4D theater and buying tickets in the future for the carousel and so forth, right? And all these things are money-generating operations to keep this facility alive. So anyway, I was there for the Creation College Expo. They do this every year. It used to be down at the Creation Museum. Now they've got it at the Ark Encounter. They bring in representatives from Creation Colleges as a recruitment thing, and then they advertise all around to Christian schools and so forth. Come to the Ark Encounter. Your parent brings you, and you can visit and talk to representatives from all these different Christian colleges, all of which are at least have received some level of approval of acceptance by Answers in Genesis as like this would be an okay place to go because they have at least some people at these institutions that teach creation, creation science, right? But so here, if I open up the catalog that I picked up when I was there, this is all the schools that participated that had booths there. And you can see that there's different sponsorship levels. I'm not sure what it takes to be a diamond sponsor. And the reason I say that, I wouldn't say it's just money, because when I look at who's a diamond sponsor, you've got Bryan College, Clark Summit University, Jackson Hole Bible College, which I'll talk about in a minute, Maranatha, Ohio Christian, and Word of Life Bible Institute. These are really, really small schools, some of them on the order of a dozen students. And so these aren't large institutions, but these are all institutions that are very much in line with Answers in Genesis, views on pretty much everything. And so they would receive a very, a good grade. Now, the Ark Encounter, Answers in Genesis has a list, if you go to their website, of approved Christian colleges. Like, these are the best ones to go to. And they have a set of criteria for determining that. They have the whole list of things that that school needs to affirm. And they do send out a survey, right? They send a survey to all these schools. And they have an administrator there, click off like these things are all true. Do we accept all these things? And their criteria, like, well, of course, does their science departments only teach creation science? They can talk about other topics, but they have to talk about them from the perspective of a young Earth creationist viewpoint. But the other thing they would, but in order to get on their good list, right, on the best list, on the top approved list, you would also have to commit, the college has to commit to our theology department, right, our religion department, has to also be fully on board with young earth creationism, and that's what they teach, right? They don't teach, something materials from Biologos or any other place. You can't have any crazy professors that have alternative viewpoints. They need to be solidly committed to that. And then they also have to have a commitment from the administration, right? The president, provost, and others, that the university or college is committed to the young earth perspective and a young earth worldview. And so if you have all three of those things, then you've hit the trifecta of creation college perfection. And at that point, you are put on the best list of colleges to be in. And I'm not sure I don't think that all these diamond sponsors are, but several of them are on that list. The other ones that are on that list are things like Cedarville University, and Pensacola Christian College. All right, those are heavy supporters of Andrews and Genesis. Cedarville University is up here in Ohio. Ken Ham goes there all the time for talks and so forth. Other one of these are not there, and you will notice if you look down this list of colleges that Liberty University is not present, and they've had some squabbles with Liberty and their faculty, and especially their religion department there in recent years, and they've actually removed them from some of their lists of even the second tier colleges that they would recommend to their students. There really just aren't. There's only, I think the top tier only consists of 8 or 9 colleges now, and some of them are extremely small colleges. So there's not a lot of options if you want to send your kid to a place that is fully invested in the Answers in Genesis world. Nonetheless, they have these 50 or so, I guess maybe it's almost 60 or so of schools represented at this particular creation expo that you can talk to. Here's the spread from that thing they give out, and I thought I would show this because I think it's worth, as an introduction to the Ark Encounter, let them use their own words to describe what they are versus me telling you what the Ark Encounter is. So the Ark Encounter is a one-of-a-kind, historically themed attraction in an entertaining, educational, and immersive way. As I said before, when it first opened, these words wouldn't have rung terribly true because I wouldn't call it entertaining. Educational, maybe. Immersive, yes, but not immersive in the sense of when you go to places where they do reenactments, where they have people dressed up and they'll tell you what life was like and they're sort of showing you how things were done. There wasn't an interactive element at all like that. There still isn't that kind of interaction. Maybe there will be when they build this future city, ancient city, to show you what life was like during those times. Nonetheless, back to this description, centered on Noah's Ark as recorded in the Bible. So yes, Noah's Ark is the central focus. As the largest timber frame structure in the world, the 510-foot-long full-size ark is designed to be family-oriented, historically authentic. Historically authentic. There's no description in scriptures of exactly what anything in the interior looked like. We know it had a window, and we know that it's described as being a large boat. But the pictures you see of their boat is still a artistic license, I guess you could say. So, historically authentic only just refers to the fact that they believe that Noah's Ark is a historical reality, right? And so this thing represents something that was historically real. Not that what they're actually showing you is representative of what you would have seen had you seen the original Noah's Ark. And environmentally friendly. I think that's an interesting phrase because, honestly, I think just saying that is probably a little bit off-putting to a good portion of their audience. And I'm not really sure what it means, environmentally friendly. I don't see any solar panels on the top of it, right? So I'm not exactly sure what that refers to and why it's even included. Transported back in time, visitors get a glimpse of what Noah's like. Now, these are important words here. Might have been like learn how Noah could have cared for all the animals. Now, yeah, I'll grant that when you visit inside the ark, there are several locations where there are things on the wall that remind the audience, if they're willing to read that far down the text, remind the audience that what is depicted is a hypothesis, essentially, right? It's here's how they could have done this. This is what this could have looked like. This is what the animals may have looked like that were on the ark. It's an admission that, yes, we don't have scripture that tells us exactly what all the details were, and therefore we're imagining what that could have been. We're inferring from the evidence of what we understand about the natural world about how this could have been done. In other words, we're using the present to try to extrapolate into the past as to what things could have looked like. Those are important words. This doesn't hit most people, because when I walked around inside the ark and I saw parents talking to their kids about things that they were seeing, it's sort of like everything they would say, and I heard this many, many times, and it's totally natural, right? Oh, see, that's how Noah, fed that animal. Oh, see, now that's what those animals look like when they were on the ark. Oh, see, now this is how, they would have kept all the food inside of these. Here's how they would have gotten rid of the feces from that, because there's a display on how do you get rid of the poop, right? And everything that parents say is telling kids this is how it was done, when they should be using words that are like on here, which is, this is how it might have been done. This is a possible way that it could have worked. But we naturally don't fall into using those kind of qualified terminology. But they are using the right words in this thing here. But then look at the last line. See how the ark was big enough to fit them all on board, and much more. Now, the last line doesn't have the qualifier, see how they might have fit on board. It's like, no, here's how they fit on board. All right, they're much more definitive about the kinds and the limited number of kinds that were on the ark. And they don't use qualified language when they're displaying that material, because they feel very confident in the science of that aspect of it, because they don't need the Bible to tell them what the truth is. They can figure it out, all right, using scientific arguments. And so they don't qualify that particular aspect of what's on the ark. Okay, back to the Creation College Expo very quickly. Not going to talk about all these colleges and the things I did. I spent some time, at various booths looking at materials of different colleges. I have a son that's at a Christian college that I was a little surprised wasn't actually represented at this particular location. But here's Pensacola Christian College, which I said before is a college that very much fits in line with Answers in Genesis. And then there was just dozens of very, very small schools that likely you've never heard of. And they're very local in different places. And most are extremely specialized. They may only have just a couple degrees. And so maybe you only go there for 2 years, or maybe it's mostly a correspondence school and maybe you go there for a week, there's all these different models, right, for getting a college education today. And many schools employ all these different alternative models. I had never heard of some of these schools, and I know a lot of Christian colleges. The big one is Cedarville. They have a very large presence there. I wasn't surprised by that. In our area in Ohio, of course, but I would say the surrounding several states, any Christian school is probably got Cedarville on their radar, and they probably have academic advisors that push students toward going to a place like Cedarville. Now, the one I do want to talk about just briefly is Jackson Hole Bible College. And Jackson Hole Bible College is near and dear to Ken Ham's heart. They are a school that is in, Jackson Hole, Wyoming, so fantastic location, right? But they have typically like 10 students a year, and it is just a school for learning biblical foundations and creation apologetics. It's a 1-year program, basically a certificate, I guess. So it's a college, but it's just like you go there to learn about creation science. And they have a huge list of like the faculty, but the faculty are all people strewn across the creation science world who you're either watching their videos or maybe they come out for a week and talk. So you're out there for some intensive time period, and people fly in and then do their thing. I mean, Ken Ham is listed as a teacher there. But I can't remember the last time that Ken Ham actually went there to do anything. I think it just means that you're going to watch some Ken Ham videos. So he's gonna be teaching you stuff, and it's the brainchild of the Landises who know Ken Ham quite well. I believe one of Ken Ham's sons actually has gone to Jackson Hole, but I've always had an interest in this particular college because I've known of several grads that come from Jackson Hole, and they're pretty fired up about creation science, that's for sure. So, if you want to get the true, like really immersive experience in creation science, then that would be the college for you. And that college was one of the diamond sponsors, at this particular expo. Again, like I said, I don't think the diamond sponsor could possibly mean they gave the most money to be a diamond sponsor, because I can't imagine they can afford it. Most of the small schools are barely eking it out. All right, so now we're in so all the booths the couple booths I just showed you are actually behind these chairs. And so imagine that there's 50 booths. All right, so this building is quite large. And despite having 50 booths back there, there's still 500 chairs set up for different talks that are taking place. And so if you go to you go to the Ark Encounter on a weekend, you're most likely going to be able to attend some kind of talk that's being given there, or there's going to be some kind of choir, or there's going to be some kind of music event, or something's going to be going on live in this location. Here they've got a choir from one of those colleges that's singing in between speakers, and that wall that you see here, this is all one large, probably OLED screen. All right. One massive high-def screen that they can do all kinds of stuff with. The sound system was amazing in the building, and so this is it was an impressive. It feels very high-tech, the best of the best in most cases for things, and so I think all of this, and this has been part of Ken Ham's thing ever since the beginning. Objecting to sort of like, if you look at old creation science materials, they're kind of cheesy, I guess would be a good word for it, in terms of the graphics and so forth, and sort of sub-quality printing, and pamphlets were very substandard to the standards of the day at the time, even in the 70s and 80s. And that gives the impression of it not being professional. And if you're don't look professional, then you don't trust the information as much. One thing Ken Ham has learned that is, in order to be taken seriously and to draw trust, is to be as good at marketing, be as good as presenting, be as good at publishing materials as anybody else out there in the secular society. All right, be as good as that other museum down the street. If you go up to Cincinnati and you go to whatever their most popular museum is, we better match that quality in terms of the displays, in terms of the feeling in the environment. And you do get that from the Ark Encounter. It feels like a professionally run park in most ways. And that lends credibility. All right, you come in and you think, they must be doing something right. This what I'm being told, there must be some truth in it, because it's all done so well, right? They care so much about it. It reeks of authenticity, and that is I'll say that's one of the successes of the Ark Encounter. That makes it a powerful witness, being that way. And that's been I would say that's been the downfall of some past theme parks that are Christian oriented, is that they tend to be way overboard on the fakery, the fake feeling of them, like just really emotional stuff, but really cheap at the same time, and it just doesn't sustain over time. All right, so then I went to I planned my time there to be there for a particular talk, because this is the main reason I went, was to spend the hour listening to Bodhi Hodge, or Hodge. I don't know how to say his last name. And I should have listened more carefully and introduced him, huh? And I wanted to spend time listening to his talk. He talked about a basic talk about the age of the earth. Bodhi is the son-in-law of Ken Ham. And Bodhi is really he's the guy that's sort of running Answers in Genesis right now. Ken Ham is semi-retired in a sense. He's just figurehead, and he's what everybody sees. But Bodhi is really behind the scenes making it all happen. He's the one that's running the day-to-day operations, sort of the CEO. And in a way, he's probably the one set up most to become the next figurehead too. And I've heard Bodhi talk in the past a couple times, and he's actually a really good speaker. Just from an analyzing, the qualities of a speaker. He's a very good speaker. Now, his information is very incorrect, right? But as a communicator, he's an extremely effective communicator. I'll say Ken Ham is an effective communicator partly because of his own reputation and his fame, right? People just listen to him because it's Ken Ham. And they go to see Ken Ham, and they want to see Ken Ham speak versus anybody else. But I would say if you had Bodhi Hodge up there, he could be the most effective speaker that they have. And part of that is because he has a much more personal style. He's much funnier than Ken Ham. Ken Ham is only funny because it's scripted, and he just knows like how to do it, but not because he's actually a humorous person. Right? He's a completely unhumorous person, whereas Bodhi actually has a sense of humor. I don't know how I've never run into Bodhi in the past, because we both went, I was a postdoc at Southern Illinois University in the late 90s, and he got his bachelor's and master's degree at Southern Illinois University in mechanical engineering. And so I was in the building, one building or two away from him. And I spent a lot of time in various Christian ministries on campus at Southern Illinois University at the time I was there. And so would have been at the tables and at different types of events and so forth. And I don't know, I kind of assumed that I probably have actually talked to him. When I was there, I probably ran into him. We probably did something near each other. We just never knew each other. So anyway, interesting possible connection between the two of us. He's I took a lot of notes on his talk on the flood and so forth, and it was all standard stuff. And so I left, and as I walked out, I took this selfie with Cardboard Ham, so that's as close as I got to Ken Ham this day. I have met Ken Ham in the past, so it wasn't like I was needing to be there to meet him. And this is the area outside of that. The bookstore, you can get your coffee. This is the entrance to the conference center. It's all very nicely done. The bookstore and the books that they sell are, and let me show you a couple more pictures of them. So here they have, the walls for different particular authors that are all Answers in Genesis authors. One thing that gets me is that if you walk around and look at all the books, they're all Answers in Genesis books. Right? They are a Christian apologetics ministry, not just for creation science, but really try to answer all questions, right? All answers that come from Genesis for everything you'd ever want to know. And it's all derived from their own people. So it's a very select set of authors that have written all of these books. And there's only a couple books and an entire bookstore that come from other publishers, because they have their own publishing house, essentially. treat it as a separate entity, and it looks like a separate entity, but it's really enters in Genesis. And so everything that they're pushing out toward those who come in is their own material, right? Their own self-generated material. It's not like here's a book by, even for Christian ministry type stuff or just other basic theology books, it comes from them. So it's a very insular world. Everything is kind of feeds back on itself in that. Now, of course, that makes it all very consistent or fairly consistent in terms of the message. And that's the thing that makes people feel safe, right? It's like I pick up this book or that book, I'm receiving the same kind of message, right, from an organization that I trust. But you're not hearing voices from outside. I don't mean just mean creation science voices. I mean just on other theological, social issues and how Christians should deal with them. If you're getting all your information from one site, you're essentially putting yourself underneath just one or two or three essential figures that are essentially deciding the position on all those different topics. So there's Bodhi's books. He's written a whole bunch of books on a lot of different topics. And of course, I checked out Nathaniel Jeanson's section, which actually seeing his book section reminded me of like how he is not pressed upon to be a writer of material other than this one book so far, which he has another book coming out. But that's it, Replacing Darwin, which has been turned into multiple different types of versions, like the easy version, the more complex version, and the video. But that's it for Nathaniel Jeanson. Let's go back out to the grounds real quick. Better step it up here. I've got a lot more slides to go. It's nice. It really is. I can imagine this summer, they've got all the planters out. Lots of beautiful plants, a lot of things to see, lots of different snacks to buy. You got the zip line, like I said before, you have the 4D theater, you got lots of playgrounds for kids. There is, I'll get to it eventually. Here I am back at the Ark, just to give you a sense of scale again. Here is the ramp going up to the main door, which you don't actually use. That's not how you get in the Ark. It's there for appearances and for special promotions. Here it was in 2016, so this is me walking over underneath the Ark where the actual entrance is, and I took this picture of the ramp still in construction at the time, and here it is today. Here is underneath the Ark, and so this is the queue to get in. This was me in 2016. I'm actually in the very front of the line, and so it was like I said, there really weren't that many people there that day. But I would imagine on a day in which they have 6,000 or 7,000 people on the grounds that day. Well, now the grounds are much larger. There's a lot of other things to do, so not everyone needs to be getting into the Ark at the same time. So I wouldn't imagine it's really all that. They don't need all this space at this time. This is standing at the Ark, looking back toward the conference center, and this would be the entrance here, the rainbow. There's the lake. It's a nice area. So let's walk behind the Ark and go to the zoo real quick. And when you get to the zoo, why a zoo? Well, got to have other things for kids to look at. You have the petting zoo, you have, and it's also there as another teaching opportunity. So inside the Ark, you have all these animals in cages. There's no live animals at all in the Ark. You have all these replicas of animals. And these animals look a lot different than what you might expect because they're the original kinds or something like the original kind that's on the Ark. So they look kind of different, and there's explanations for that in there. But then, of course, when the animals left the Ark, they had to distribute themselves across the world. And so that's one of the major questions that faces young Earth creationists is like, how did just 2 animals get off the Ark and then disperse across the entire world? So here we have, when you come into the zoo, the first sign you see is dispersion. From the Ark to the ends of the earth. After the flood, the Ark animals dispersed from the landing site in Ararat and spread throughout the globe. This dispersion helped animals survive in a remade world by exposing them to fresh resources and different climates. initially distancing growing populations from predators or competition from other predators, right? What happens if there's 2 rabbits get off the ark and then the 2 canines eat them right away? Well, then that would be the end of them. So this idea that somehow they just went off in different directions and then didn't see each other for a while until their populations grew large enough that they could handle the predation. And then this, I think it's kind of a kooky idea, sending out fast migrators such as seed dispersing birds that could help prepare the landscape for slower migrators. All right, so they're telling their audience, all right, we know there's this probably there's a question in your mind, right? If you've just visited the Ark, you're going to wonder, like, where did these animals come from? And also, why did the animals look different that we're showing you in the zoo as living animals compared to those animals we just showed you on the Ark, where they didn't really look like anything that you were familiar with today? So we need to have some explanations for that. Now, that's explanations on the Ark. It's about hyperevolution and how organisms change very rapidly. So here's their explanations for like how things got around, and they picked out a couple like ones that they know that have been asked of creationists many times, and they suspect that their audience, people wondering, are probably going to ask those same questions, right? Like tortoises. How did large tortoises get to the Galapagos Islands and other places on the earth? If tortoises are really slow walkers and they're only found in certain continents far away from the original Ark, and so they bring out the 2 main arguments. One is there was an ice age, and then the animals went across the land bridge and across Alaska into Asia, and that allowed them to travel down into North America and South America. And then the other favorite is riding the ocean currents. And so how did sloths, right, get to South America? Because that's the only place that sloths are found. And there's a lot of species of sloths in South America, but nowhere else in the world. Well, again, they could have gone over a land bridge and then walked all the way down into South America, or they could have rode the ocean currents. So there was all kinds of material floating around in the seas, and they could have stepped off onto a floating mat on the ocean after the Ark, somewhere near the Red Sea or something like that. And then they could have floated across the ocean, landing in South America, and then hopped off there and then diversified into all the sloths there. And you see the same thing with kangaroos. I'm just going to point out, this wasn't going to be a big, like, my scientific problems with the Ark Encounter, but I'm just going to point out that the kangaroo one is a little more complex than they make it out to be. It's like, okay, there's a kangaroo. How did kangaroos get to Australia and they're only found in Australia? Well, there is a problem. If you read this carefully, you'll see that they admit that there doesn't seem to be any land bridge that existed, all the way close to. It got very close, but there still probably was ocean separating Australia from the rest of Asia. And so they employ the riding the ocean current thing again, too, that there was so much debris in the ocean that they could have hopped on debris and floated across some strait and then gotten off on the other side. I just want to point out very quickly here that there are, according to the Ark Encounter inside, there are 28 different types of 28 different kinds of marsupials that are only found in Australia. And so all 28 of those kinds would have been represented on the Ark. All 28 of those kinds had to get off the Ark at Ararat, walk down to some place, all hop onto floating vegetation and float across the ocean, and all get off just in Australia and not in any other continent. So it's not just a matter of explaining a one-time event, it's explaining it 28 times that this happened in that way. And obviously the odds of it happening once were already incredibly slim and not realistic. Happening 28 times, it becomes astronomically unlikely. All right, walking back from the zoo. Now, I want to say about the zoo, it's small. There's probably 15 different significant displays there. They're well done. It's a nice zoo. I think the animals look like they're well taken care of. They're nice displays. I mean, they're very modern, zoo-ish displays. And I think that kids would enjoy seeing the animals they have there as much as they would at any other zoo. So totally fine with the zoo. I think it's probably a huge expense. Running a zoo is not cheap. And so I really don't know how I don't know if the cost justifies having the zoo. I don't know how they really balance that. Nonetheless, the zoo's not bad at all. And this is walking back from the zoo. So now you get the backside view of the Ark, and they have these large support buildings behind it. I mean, this is essentially where the restroom facilities are, and a little bit of food resource and so food sales and so forth, and other things are in this area. Just a couple pictures of the grounds. Again, very nicely laid out. There's another building that they have food there, but also there's a little entertainment area there. They can have smaller talks and probably have bring an animal out and talk about it and so forth. They've got this fossil sluice. It's November, so a lot of these things are closed. But in the summer, kids are going to love this, right? Water flowing down here. You can take some sediment. You can sort the sediment in the water and collect different fossils. And then they have a little guide there that tells you what fossils you can find and where they're located. Some of those fossils are actually local fossils. This again is walking back from the Ark Encounter. This is just showing some of the beautiful grounds. And lots of places to eat, hang out. This is actually my original picture of the restaurant, so it looks a lot nicer in terms of the grounds today. Inside the restaurant, large cafeteria style thing. And coming out of the restaurant, or you can sit up on the top level of the restaurant outside, and you get this particular view. It's impressive. It's really an impressive view. Here I am standing a little bit closer. That's actually the exit to the Ark. So you enter, and eventually there's a bookstore underneath here. You come out here, and then sort of feed you right into the restaurant there. And you can see there's a whole bunch of Mennonites visiting that day. Very popular Mennonite or Amish place to visit. That's one thing they've really lost over the last year or two because of the pandemic, is they would have large numbers of buses come in from bus tours. And that's a large portion of their business in the summertime. All right, so we're back to circling around, and it's time to leave. And so I get back on my bus, and I head back to the parking lot. And from there, I'm ready to head back to Cincinnati, but I thought I would take a little short jaunt, side trip over to Williamstown. And that's the town that's closest to the Ark Encounter. Now, there was much talk when the Ark Encounter first opened about the promises made by Ken Ham and others about how this is going to economically revitalize this area. This is a poor area of Kentucky. Hopefully there would be hotels, and this would bring in a lot of business. And, honestly, it hasn't done that much for Williamstown. And it's not surprising. I'm not shocked by this at all. I mean, Williamstown is like a mile away on the other side of the freeway. And it's a quaint little town, but I never saw, right from the beginning, I never saw any of the type of people that are going to come to see the Ark Encounter are going to be like, hey, let's go over the town and walk the street and go to some shops or something like that. That's not what they're there for. And so people have found it very easy to just find hotels that are closer to Cincinnati in northern Kentucky, where there's other things to do. And you're closer to Cincinnati stuff, right? And then just take the trip down and do the visit to the Ark Encounter. There are no hotels have been built on this particular exit, and there's plenty of room to put hotels there, but it hasn't become necessary. Now, that doesn't mean that the Ark Encounter is a failure in terms of bringing people into the Ark Encounter. It's a failure in terms of revitalizing the area around it. Here's Shem's snack shop. Let me read that. Snack Smack. Never saw that was the name of it before. So this is a store on the other side of the freeway. As you can see, it's closed. And actually, I looked it up. And Ken Ham, right as the Ark Encounter opened, was promoting this place because it's like, hey, look, a business opened in Williamstown. And this is even before you get to Williamstown. It's just right on the other side of the freeway. But again, you'd have to like actually decide to go over to the other side of the freeway to get to this. We've seen hundreds of thousands of people pouring into the Ark Encounter, Ark Encounter themed attractions south of Cincinnati. Now most of the visitors are actually from outside the tri-state area of Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana. And then he promotes this new restaurant that has opened. Unfortunately, as you can see, it's closed. And you might think, oh, maybe it closed because of the pandemic, right? Lots of restaurants have closed because of the pandemic. But I went and I looked, and I found out that actually it dissolved in February of 2019, 3 years later. I also looked up the person who's the director or owned this particular company that owned this particular snack shack. Found out that he's a cancer doctor. And owns a bunch of other stuff, but he's obviously interested in creation science and creationism, and so saw this as an opportunity to start a company down there related to the Ark Encounter, but was not successful in this particular case. So Williamstown it's a nice little town, but I don't think it's ever going to gain any kind of significant economic benefit from having the Ark Encounter next to it. The Ark Encounter really stands alone as a separate entity, and as it grows larger, there isn't any reason to leave the grounds to go get food somewhere else. It's all provided for you there. The only thing you would need at the Ark Encounter is a place to stay. If you wanted to be very close by in terms of a place to sleep. But the Ark Encounter is a 3, 4, 5 hour like thing you're going to do. There's plenty of time to drive there, experience that, drive back 45 minutes to an area where there's a lot of other resources and modern restaurants and so forth. I don't see this area ever being built up into a modern mecca of restaurants and hotels that are servicing the Ark Encounter, even though the number of people at the Ark Encounter could actually support. There are as many people there at the Ark Encounter as you would need for those facilities. It's just they're not needed. It's like, okay, that's a whirlwind tour of the Ark Encounter as it sort of exists today. Now, let me just talk for a few minutes. Let me give out my report cards. I didn't discuss the science here and the presentation of the evidence for why why Noah's Ark could contain all the animals, and there is so much more in the Ark about an entire worldview of the world being young and how it can all be explained through different evidences from science. Didn't talk about that. I've talked about that in plenty of other places. I'm just going to tell you, what else can I do? I have to give them an F for it. There's just so much misinformation. It's an attempt to fit data round data into a square peg. Sure. They have a presupposition of this is the way the data, that everything must support our particular understanding of the history of the earth. And so we're going to force the data into that. And in some senses, I understand that, right? We have the truth, and the world around us must also speak that truth. The evidence around us must speak that truth as well. But that data is so manipulated. They're smart enough to know that they are misinforming their audience. They're not presenting all the evidence. It's not just that it's cherry-picked. It's also consciously avoids representing certain parts of the evidence. And so anyone who goes in there and just absorbs the information there is going to walk out unprepared to talk to anybody else who understands that scientific evidence from another viewpoint. They're not being prepared. Despite that being one of their main missions, is to prepare kids and students and others to confront a world around them that doesn't believe what they believe. I have to give it an F. It's just lousy. All right, it fails on so many different levels. Now, family friendly. Yeah, it's a family friendly place, no doubt about it. And I think that compared to what I thought in 2016, it's definitely a place that the kids would enjoy going. I think they're going to be a little bored in the Ark itself, but most people are going to zip through the Ark in 45 minutes. Only the really dedicated ones who are going to read the signs and try to learn anything are going to spend an hour or 2 or 3 hours in the Ark itself. They're going to go out and then they're just going to enjoy the time there together, and they're going to feel like, hey, this was a fun time with the family. And from that perspective, that's fine. And honestly, I've talked to a lot of people who have gone there, and they couldn't even tell you like what is the Ark Encounter actually teaching. They already believed that Noah's flood happened. And this is the history of the earth. They some of them are only dimly aware that they were even promoting that the world was only 6,000 years old, because they didn't pay enough attention to the signs, and they just kind of wandered around, looked at stuff, and said, "Oh well, here's the ark, right?" So only those who are really dedicated to like even trying to understand the scientific viewpoint that's being presented there are going to absorb that. And so even though I give them an F on the science, I think a lot of people walk in never really, they don't even get what's being said there, just in a very superficial way. And so it is a family friendly place, and I see it as being a place that people will come back to, and that's the thing that will give it longer lasting success than just 5 years. And that's why it has survived 5 years, and even through this coronavirus thing. As a Christian witness, how do I feel as a Christian? Yeah, I'm concerned about what people see and hear there. I gave it a U as being undetermined, because I don't know how each individual person will receive the message of the Ark Encounter and how that will interact with their Christian faith going forward. I'm sure that there are some who, they see the world out around them as being attacking Christianity. They go here, they feel comfortable. It's like, here's people who are presenting a very professional presentation, and they seem to have lots of evidence, and I don't understand that evidence necessarily, but I'm comforted by the fact that there are Christians who are doing science, and they have come up with answers to how to explain all these things that other people are telling me can't be explained. And they're never going to go any farther than that, right? They're never going to think any more about it. They're never going to dig any deeper. And in that situation, Ken Ham and others have done what they need to do. They're holding on to Christians and giving them a reason for maintaining their faith, because they think that's something that could undermine it. And they're going to walk away, and they're probably never going to be challenged the rest of their lives, and that's all fine. It's not going to make any difference. There are those that are going to come and they're completely absorbed in the ideas, and they're going to suck up all the information here, and they're going to think that they have the answers, and they really think about these questions. They're the ones that are going to go out and be faced with going to even many Christian colleges. They're going to be faced with looking at alternative viewpoints, and they're going to wonder, what exactly was I taught here? And those are the ones that are going to have kind of that moment where they're going to have to decide for themselves. And what do I do with the fact that I was brought up that this is the only way to understand, and now I'm faced with there's other perspectives, even from Christian perspectives, there are other ways of thinking about how to understand Noah's Ark and all the other issues that are discussed at the Ark Encounter. Overall, I feel like God's word is being spoken in this place, and God's word is effective even if it comes from the mouth of somebody who has little understanding of God's word. I'll put it that way, right? I mean, you can people go to a Catholic church and they hear the actual word of God being spoken, and maybe it's mixed with a bunch of other, I think, false theology. But yet God can work through that, right? God works through, pastors who are basically heretics, but they actually get people to read the Bible, and they actually say things that God uses as a spark to help them understand and might lead them to something else. And so what I'm saying is, I don't think that this is the best Christian witness. This isn't the best expression of Christianity. This isn't the best Christian theology or understanding of the Bible. It certainly has elements of Christianity, and certainly there is the gospel message being shared here. I don't think it's shared in the most effective way, but it's shared in a way that I think some people will come to Christ through a place like the Ark Encounter. I think there's much more effective ways of presenting the Christian message as the best way to understand the history of this world and our reason for being here. But I'm not going to completely poo-poo the fact that Answers in Genesis doesn't have some effect. I'm upset about all the bad things that come from Answers in Genesis and the misconceptions that they leave in Christians' minds and have created. And so, yeah, I get very upset about that. But I'm going to just leave it here as I'm undecided about its Christian witness. It's every individual is going to have a different reaction at this place. And it's not uniformly atrocious. As a business success, I think that it's I think it's successful. It's a very expensive thing to run, and they're adding more and more infrastructure. And of course, more infrastructure means more expense. But it also means the ability to keep people returning. And that's the way it works. You add new attractions because you have to get people to come back a second or third time. This is not a place that is going to attract a large number of non-Christians. So they have a certain audience. And once everyone who's in that prospective set of visitors has come, they have to get them to come back. And that's the whole thing with hey, music festival, your favorite musician's going to be here. You're going to take a trip to come see that musician, and you're going to buy a ticket to see the Ark. And you're going to get people to come back. Conferences. They have pastors' conferences, right? They bring in pastors from all over. They give them like free tickets to come here, and they bring in other well-known pastors to come give talks on a variety of different subjects. Most of it's not science at all. And then, of course, when those pastors are there, they give them a couple free tickets to visit with their families. And then, hey, they go back to their congregation, tell them how great it is. Everybody should go. They have bus trips, mission trips that come, and they visit the Ark Encounter. Right? They're building. It is they're expert marketers. They really are. They're very good at marketing. Or Ken Ham in particular is a draw. And so I'll say that it's not been a raging success because they clearly haven't had the numbers that I think they really hoped and thought that they could get to the Ark Encounter. But contrary to what other people have said in terms of like, hey, this is going to like fall apart and this is just going to like die in 5 years because no one's going to come back and they're not going to get enough people. It's going to be too expensive. No, that's not happened. I'll say it's close to thriving right now, especially with the rebound after the fact that they survived the pandemic and being closed for several months, and are now building, and they have a campaign to raise money, and they're raising money, and people are donating, another $30 million to build the next few attractions. Right, all their attractions are prepaid for. Right, they don't owe money on any of these things. And so it's a moderate success from a business perspective. And 5 years from now, it's still going to be here. And I think it'll be at a similar level of success. Now, 10-year prospects, that's where it gets interesting because I think the 10-year prospects here are, they're challenging because there's two major challenges. You have, one is, how long will Ken Ham be able to be the face of Answers in Genesis and be the major promoter? Because he is the marketer. He is the market. He is the thing that draws people here. And once he's unable to promote it himself, I'm sure others will continue to promote it under his name and continue to use the image of him. But it's not going to be as powerful, right? It's just not going to be quite as effective. And so there's that. There's the changeover in Answers in Genesis and the challenges they have in terms of leadership and maintaining their structure in such a way. There's also the bloat. At some point, the infrastructure will become so large that whether I don't think that the prices that the amount of money they bring in actually completely pays for the park. I think they're still reliant a little bit on donations, just generally, in order to continue. And so they're always at that danger point of like overgrowing to the point where they can't sustain their own infrastructure. And that's a very difficult place to be in for large companies. So the other thing I'll say is that they have a problem, I think, down the line with who their prospective audience is. I said before, there aren't many just non-Christians who are going to be like, hey, I wonder what this Ark thing's about. I'm going to go spend, drop $250 for my family to visit there, plus the zip lines, plus the food, plus all that, right? You potentially are going to drop $1,000 in a day visiting a site. That's just not going to happen. And so you have to get Christians who have already been here to come back. They have to see it as an attraction, as a destination. And like I said, I think they will. But I think that their audience is becoming even more constricted over time. And I'm going to talk in other videos about how they really see BioLogos and other Christian groups eating into their audience because they are losing market share, right? There are fewer and fewer Americans who are committed or think that they're committed to a young earth view of the world. And since this site is specifically dedicated to promoting young earth creationism, when that audience shrinks, right, their prospective audience shrinks. This audience also is becoming more and more and more tightly associated with a particular brand of politics. Because it's becoming polarized in that way, they themselves are going to get polarized too. And so there are going to be those who are absolutely in favor of the Ark Encounter, are going to come back just out of hey, I'm just doing it because I want to show everyone that I'm really a true believer, right? I've been to the Ark. But there are others. There used to be a group of Christians who were kind of like, they weren't like fully on board with young earth creationism, but they've been taught it in their Christian schools and at church and so forth. They've heard those issues, those concerns, and they're sort of like in the middle. Like, hey, yeah, maybe I could go visit the Ark. But once the Ark becomes more tightly associated with a particular political viewpoint, in addition to their views just on creation science and other social, theological points, it drives other people away. They don't want to be associated with it. It's like you have to make a choice. I'm either for the Ark Encounter or I'm against it, because you associate it with other things. And I think there's a great danger of Answers in Genesis. Now, Answers in Genesis is kind of careful not to make political statements. Ken Ham never directly supports any particular political party or something like that, but it's pretty clear, where they lie. It's pretty obvious, what they expect their followers to sort of fall in line with in terms of their voting preferences and so forth. And as the country becomes more polarized, they are going to feel the effects of that polarization. And I think that will have a long-term effect on the financial viability of this Ark Encounter theme park. All right, I think that's it. We'll wrap it up there. Thanks for hanging out with me all this time while we talk about the Ark Encounter. And till next time, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.